Hello, all, and welcome. The topic of this upcoming discussion is on communication. In our first episode, we will be discussing what good communication is and some of the key components. Stay tuned to learn more. We're going to be talking about communication, specifically skill in communicating strategies that inform and influence audiences. In regards to this very specific area of communication, you can find this in the ATD capability models under, I believe, personal development, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Hello, Lori. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. First thing I want to start off is talking about what good communication is. Nat Turner once said that good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. We're going to focus on, first and foremost, how does good communication occur and some of the key components and building blocks for strong, good communication. Good communication occurs in three ways. When we stop to think about the ways that we can communicate verbally, whether that is in written form of an email or a text or a chat, or in the form of a phone call, a video chat, or face-to-face conversation. We also can communicate non-verbally through our visual cues such as our body language, our facial expressions, the physical distance that we put between one another, and actually even our tone of voice. Additionally, we communicate through visual means such as things like signs or web pages or illustrations. The main thing that we need to focus on is that good communication needs to be simple and clear. We need to convey our point in a simple and clear manner by relating the message to the learner on a personal level. It's very important that we develop rapport because communication can only be enhanced by that. Oprah Winfrey once said that great communication begins with connection, and it couldn't be more true. Again, stressing the importance of developing rapport with whom you're communicating. Being sure that we always provide factual information is another key component, and that we give this information in a brief and specific manner. When clarification is needed, it's always important that we ask questions and engage the learner or engage the person that we're communicating with so that we can make sure that understanding is occurring and that everything that we are communicating is clear. We should always be looking for nonverbal cues and using our active listening skills as well.
Okay, so Lori, that was a great breakdown as far as good communication occurring and what are some of the key components to good communication. With that, what would you identify as some of the building blocks for strong communication?
Well, being that strong communication is the cornerstone for thriving businesses, healthy relationships, and your overall career success, the four things that we should always focus on are people, the message, the context, and effective listening skills. So let's first talk about people. When we are communicating, we always want to think about the other person's perspective. What we intend to say may be completely different than what they take away from what you have actually said. So we want to consider the think, feel, do. What do I want them to think? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do as a result of what I'm trying to communicate?
Yeah, I think there are different tools for communication. I know a really popular one that's commonly used is the DISC model. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of goes into different ways that people communicate and their styles. Because you're right, what your intention behind what you're saying is not necessarily how it's going to land with the other person because they're interpreting it, they're filtering it through their past experiences, right, through their current situation. So I feel like a very practical example is like your partner says, "Oh, I have this big project. I'm going to be home late." Understandable, very clear communication, but like the spouse might feel like, "Oh, so that means like I'm going to have to like do X, Y, and Z and you're not going to be home to do it." So I just feel like being very clear in our communication and just anticipating how the other person might receive the information based on their context is important. And that just goes into like knowing your audience. Mm-hmm. I think that's how it's related to L&D, right? Knowing who your audience is and understanding what you're going to say. I mean, businesses who are creating training, let's say around policy, like really thinking through how your employees are going to be just like their perspective on this policy and being able to anticipate that so you can address it up front in the training.
Well, and to dovetail on the do part, sometimes we have requests or things that we need our colleagues to do or to act upon with us. And so sometimes we come across as being somewhat demanding. So it's more important to rephrase it as more of a suggestion, not necessarily a demand when we're collaborating with our teamwork. For example, to get the ball rolling, I suggest that I take this part and you take part B, and then we meet back and, assess. But, not to make it a demanding, you must do this, but to, just to communicate what you're trying to accomplish. The next part that is important, one of the building blocks that I want to talk about, is the message. The message we're trying to convey. It's important to consider your nonverbal signals and the tone of voice that you're using. Also to determine the mode. Is it more appropriate to deliver this message through an email, or is it something that would warrant a face-to-face? Making sure that we're not losing touch with the human side of things as well. It's not only how you word or write something, but it's also the channel that you use to send it, whether that be email or text or a phone call or a face-to-face visit. Taking into account the organizational pattern. Is your message meant to inform? If so, focus on being simple and concise and tailor it to the receiver. Or is it to persuade? Where you would craft your argument with a claim or an evidence and reasoning, or in other words, present the problem followed by the solution, and then compare and contrast as needed. Another important communication building block to consider is the context. Make sure that you're considering the timing and be mindful of the impact that your choice of timing may have. For example, the location. If you have to deliver it in person, choose a quiet conference room to avoid distractions. And depending on the message, is it something that you should deliver to the person in private versus in a group setting? The timing, is it something that is great and would be news to start off the beginning of the day or the beginning of the week to get someone motivated or pumped? Or is it on the negative side where perhaps you should wait for the end of the day or the end of the week to share that message? Again, taking timing into account. And then lastly, relationships. Take an emotional temperature and make sure that you tailor the communication appropriately to that person.
Great. Thank you, Lori, for sharing a little bit about what good communication is and some of the key components. In our next episode, we'll be discussing talent development's role in informing and influencing. Until next time.